cybersecurity is about more than just technology. It's about how people behave with emails, data, and cloud applications that directly impacts your company's security posture. Security works best when it's ingrained in the culture of your organization. To learn how to build a security culture and transform your employees from targets into a strong line of defense, head to securityweekly.com/proofpoint and visit their Cybersecurity Awareness Center. Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. In case you missed it, Paul's Security Weekly's new streaming time is Wednesday nights from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And Enterprise Security Weekly new streaming time is Thursday afternoons from 3 to 4:30 Eastern Time. You can view our live stream schedule at any time by visiting securityweekly.com/live. Also, check us out in our Discord channel. securityweekly.com/subscribe has the link to join our Discord server. Our next webcast will be tomorrow, November 4th. Pragmatic steps to reduce your software supply chain risk, sponsored by GitLab. Then on November 11th, learn the key insights and takeaways from the 2021 OWASP Top 10 list. Fine folks at Contrast Security, including Jeff Williams, will be on that webcast, securityweekly.com/webcast. Save your seat. Our on-demand library is always available at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Josh, you have a quick announcement before you have to run to a meeting.
I do. Thank you. Yeah. So B-Sides Delaware is, God Lord, I think it's our 12th one. Our second virtual one, and hopefully our last virtual one, is happening November 12th and 13th. That's at bsidesdelaware.com, spell out Delaware. And it's in the Discord, by the way, if you're on the Discord server, which you should be. That's a hint. But B-Sides Delaware, November 12th and 13th. It's a Friday and Saturday. Tickets are free. The CFP is open. If you've got a last-minute talk, we've got some slots still available. And we'd love to see you all there. There's some great people going to be there and some great talks, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I also have something else for our listeners, which is great. You should go to B-Sides Delaware virtually and then in person, and hopefully next year. But I also open sourced some code that I had laying around that we just so happened to use to play all of the advertisements and music and bumpers here on the show. And so I thought people might want to check it out, perhaps. So Security Week, github.com/Security Weekly. This project is called PY Ad Player. I open sourced it about 7 days ago, and it has all of the code that you would need to use Python and MPV Player to play video and audio in a very specific manner. So it's not a playlist, because playlists don't do what this script does. So it basically allows you to orchestrate audio and video to play at certain intervals in a select order. Which is pretty cool. So it's open source. So if you can use it, sure, great. Alrighty. On to the security news for this week. We are going to start with my story number one, because it's story number one. 800 million medical records exposed in a data breach. Lee, I believe you had this story as well. Oh, that's your story.
I was going to say your story was how hackers caused physical diarrhea. I mean, damage.
Yeah, I mean, we can do either one, but I thought you were going to talk about physical damage.
Oh, sorry. Lee's Clippy. Story number one is where I want to start, because I thought I had this one too. No, I didn't, but I read this one, and I thought it was really funny when they said the database was at risk of a ransomware attack and was publicly accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Those are, in fact, like two different things. Does that mean like the database was both read and write exposed to the internet? Is that what that means? I don't know.
That's what I took it to mean.
Right?
So I just thought, oh, gee, my records are nice and safe in there if I was in there, and who knows, they haven't been altered. Yeah, okay.
Well, they'd be safe if it was ransomware. They'd be safer, but they almost always now create a copy of it before they encrypt it, so it's it's still less safe.
Wow. I'm curious, like what info is in here if it's anonymized, because it does look like it is a AI data set, at least part of the records that were recovered, not in this news story, but another one. The data sets that AI uses for medical reasons is often anonymized.
Is it homomorphic? Is it anonymized or homomorphic encryption?
It could be source code in the HTML anonymized, but if it is, this is a large HIPAA violation, and per record, HIPAA is quite expensive. So hopefully that is not the case.
So one of the things that
go ahead, Lee.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lee. Mine's interesting.
So one of the things that struck me is you've got 880 million records at 68 gigabytes of storage. What the hell is in those records? That makes them pretty damn big. These aren't just text, which is much smaller than that.
Well, if you think about
medical
imaging, like that stuff gets really
I was
really
wondering
fast.
if there's images in there.
The videos are huge too. Like if you take a sonogram and they make a video out of it, those videos can be
gigantic. Looks to be all text from like what I could find on it. Yeah. It looked like text. It's like patient notes, doctor notes. There were patient ID and UUID. So I'm not sure. Again, if it's not anonymized, then it could be correlatable from a UUID and patient ID national database standards.
And I wonder how much of it is non-deduplicated if it's that big of just text.
That too.
It's crazy.
So before we move on,
Larry.
I had never heard of the website that this news story came from. SACUT, Cybersecurity News.
Yeah.
I'm like, so, what the heck? And who is this? So I scrolled down to the bottom of the website and went to their about page, and it says, "We are the leading website in cybersecurity news and articles located in the United States of America."
America.
America.
No.
AMIRCA.
America.
America.
Yep.
Apparently in
they have
Lakewood, California,
in Hardwick Street, right over by the Home Depot,
because they have a map
and the Costco.
It's a Costco gas station and a Best Buy. Convenient. They're next to a Best Buy,
and they can go to the steakhouse and
Target,
Outback Steakhouse, and Dave's Hot Chicken.
Dave's Hot Chicken. I'm curious. I wonder what kind of reviews does Dave's Hot Chicken have? 3.6. Out of 5, 113 reviews.
Oof.
That's not so hot chicken. They should be called Dave's Not So Hot Chicken based on the Google reviews.
Yeah. But they're in America.
America. Good catch, Larry. Yeah. Signal is in the news twice this week. So this is 2 stories for the price of one. Signal is working on improving anti-spam capabilities. And I was like,
wait, what?
That's really cool. How is Signal going to help me with SMS spam? Right? That's what I'm assuming they're helping with. But they said, unlike Signal's underlying code, which is open source, the code for fighting spam is kept secret to prevent bad actors from finding bypasses. This is an interesting. It's an interesting trend.
That's usually a bad way to go.
But it's the same tactic, Tyler, that YouTube uses. They don't tell you how they police and analyze their content in fear of nation states, child pornographers, and others doing the same thing, which is why I think it's an interesting point and an interesting kind of debate. What I also thought was interesting is I went down a rabbit hole of the Google announcement, and it ties into Signal and spam, right? When this vulnerability was found by Google's. Hold on, there's 2. There's Google. What are the? No, that's not. Is that the article? I gotta find it. Talk about something related to this article while I find it now.
So the big one I find kind of interesting about this is that they say they don't have access to any of the messaging, so that's got to be incredibly tricky to figure out what's spam and what's not. Like, what other types of data points are they using to figure out whether stuff is spam? And have you ever actually gotten spam via Signal?
Well, not a Signal encrypted message, but if you use it as your default. Oh, so I see the disconnect here. You guys use this closed platform called iOS where you can't set your default SMS messaging app.
I think you can.
No.
Well, the last time I
never
looked,
thought
you
of
couldn't.
using Signal as my default SMS client. I didn't see any need to.
Yeah. On Android you can tell it which default app you want for your phone, and which default app you want for your messaging. Obviously,
but why would you do that? Like if you're getting SMS, you're coming across the SS7 network, and you're coming into an encrypted app, like that's going to be very confusing. You don't want to cross those streams. You want to know what's encrypted, what's not encrypted, who you're communicating with.
It tells you when it's not encrypted, Tyler. The icons and everything are different when you.
So it's like iCloud, and it goes blue versus green.
Yes, correct. It's exactly like that.
Yep. And when they have that image at the cash register at the grocery store, that's the little lock icon where you put your credit card in. It's clearly that icon is different, so it's secure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's Google's. I found it. Threat analysis group. The threat analysis group puts out what looks like a regular quarterly blog post that lists a whole bunch of statistics, and in it, in September, they say we terminated 1,217 YouTube channels as part of our ongoing investigation into coordinated influence operations linked to China. So that's just likely one campaign they identified for one country, China, and it was 1,217 channels. It says they mostly uploaded spammy content in Chinese about music. In Chinese about music, spammy content in Chinese about music, entertainment, and lifestyle. A very small subset uploaded content in Chinese and English about China's COVID-19 vaccine efforts and social issues in the U.S.
See, again, if they're doing spam analysis and they're not doing, I guess if they're not doing it for Signal, that's one thing. But most of this is going to have to occur because of end-to-end encryption, and the way they do this is going to have to occur on the client endpoint anyway. So if it's on the client endpoint, like it's not going to take much to reverse this and figure out what their analytics and query language is for spam versus not spam. Like, have you seen this phone number more than once? Is it in the contact list, which again is client side?
That's correct. That's what they're doing. That's some of the things the article says they're doing.
That doesn't seem like a super fantastic feature from a standpoint of privacy apps. Like, there's other things I would rather see.
Yep. Signal is blurring profile photos initiated by senders outside the recipient's address book. Again,
I wonder why that is.
Because the spammers are luring users with the help of provocative profile photos. That's what the article says.
Blonde in red dress.
That would be the classic example. Also, Signal unveils how far U.S. law enforcement will go to get information about people. Now, we established that Signal, and Moxie Marlinspike went on Joe Rogan and stated this as well. I think it even says it on their website, that they only collect, like, Signal, what Signal knows about you is your phone number, the date that phone number created an account with Signal, and the last time you used connected to Signal. That's all. So that's all they could send the police. However, the police, in a search warrant, Santa Clara police sought to get name, street address, telephone number, an email address of a specific Signal user, billing records, the dates when the account was opened and registered, inbound and outbound call record details, voicemails, video calls, emails, text messages, IP addresses, along with dates and times for each login, and even all the dates and times the user connected to Signal. That's what they asked for. Signal was like, yeah, I have these three things, and that's all I have, because you can't provide what you don't collect.
Yep. And they clearly state all of these things right on their website. So if the Santa Clara office had done any bit of research, they'd been. But
well, it looks to me like they were just trying to bully them, because they said they can't disclose this order either, and they extended the non-disclosure 4 times. Then they were convinced that Signal was holding out on them.
Yep. I mean,
weird.
I think we know they were barking up the wrong tree.
But
They
didn't
weren't
know
gonna
they
get that from
and
Signal.
and they didn't think. I don't know. Conjecture.
Signal was created just for situations like this, right? But again, it is that debate of privacy versus law enforcement and how you strike that balance. I mean, that's been the debate since the first public crypto systems were made available, much to the chagrin of the U.S. government, but these crypto systems were made available. And Phil Zimmerman, is part of some of those early efforts. Interesting. Alrighty.
Hey, reach down there and grab me some more ice, would you?
Yes, sir.
I'll take the bucket.
Take the next story.
Oh, well, crap. I should have been prepared for that. I know there was a story in there that Lee brought up, and it was had shared with us. Thank you, sir. About the war driving and all that stuff. And I didn't get a chance to read it, but I think
it's the same one as
the same
Israel.
one we talked
and
about.
I saw on this one it was CyberArk, which is of course an Israeli-based company.
Yeah, which that article was in Israel, so it's a rehash of last week's story about they recovered 7,700 possible password hashes through war driving, and they cracked 70% of them or something like that. But yep, absolutely.
I didn't realize it was a rehash, but 70% of hashes being cracked was like crazy high. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you talked about that last week. How was it last week, right? The way they did that, and
Yep. And that got me reinvigorated to go do some of that stuff, and I grabbed my Ponegachis.
Your Yamagati?
My Ponegachis out of the drawer and updated those in the evenings, and
awesome.
Brought one with me, and probably got the hashes for the studio, and I'm just kidding.
Sweet. You have the password to the studio, but now you have the hashes. I mean, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Let's see. This one's pretty funny. 8 funny cybersecurity quotes and why they matter to you. I don't know if you guys saw this story.
I did.
It was a list of a whole bunch of quotes. And so I kind of broke some of these out because when I started reading the quotes, I was like, that's maybe not so great. That's, great at the time. So I read the first one. Treat your password like your toothbrush. Don't let anybody else use it, and get a new one every 6 months. Now, you guys, do our listeners know who said that? Anyone? I mean, of course they can.
Cliff Stoll?
Yeah, Cliff Stoll, because it's in the show notes. But so this one to me was like, passwords are like underwear. Does everyone remember that? Like when I worked for university, we had posters drawn up like passwords are like underwear. Like you don't share them with your friends and all these like funny things.
And you can use them more than once if you turn them inside out.
That's a good one. That was not on our posters, but it should have been. And they're labeled for each day of the week. No, wait.
Yep.
It's a horrible. It's not a horrible. I say it's a horrible analogy, but which I spelled wrong. But it's dated, right? Because
but
rotating your passwords is no longer recommended by many of the standards bodies. Sharing is, of course, still bad, but I also think we've got so many other ways to grant other people access to various accounts and/or secrets. I'll give 2 examples. One are password/secret vaults, vaults. So password vaults for sharing passwords with other users. And Secrets Vault for sharing passwords across applications, and OAuth for both people for people to grant applications access to your accounts or applications to share secrets with each other potentially.
Admittedly, there is still some truth to the password rotation.
Not as frequent, I think, is what they recommend, right?
But if you find you're a member of a site that's been compromised and your password gets compromised, that's
more
time
standing.
That's a good time to rotate. So not completely useless.
So no, I don't say useless, just I think dated, right? I think at the time when Cliff Stoll was saying that, it was very much on point, very much on point, right? And I think that's pretty similar to the 3 golden rules to ensure computer security are: do not own a computer, do not power it on, and do not use it. And that was said
He's
by
not wrong.
He is not wrong, Robert Morris. However,
Yeah.
I don't dispute his claim. I think it's right. We've said it too, Larry. I know you've always said the computer in the
Yeah,
underground.
the most secure
concrete.
computer is one that's unplugged and buried in 6 feet of concrete.
Right. I mean, to me,
Right.
that's just less feasible as time goes on because, I mean,
There's a computer and everything.
we could not use computers today. However, there's a computer and everything. Most of us carry one in our pocket. There's a lot of services that require that you at least access some sort of computing device to accomplish some task or goal. I can think of vaccine registration as one of those more recent things where, like, if you didn't have a computer, you had to go find someone with a computer or computing device.
Go to the library.
Or go to the library. You had to find a computer to go register for a vaccine, right? I mean, there were services set up for people that didn't have computers, but that you were just going to a person who had a computer to register for a vaccine. So, I think, that one's kind of dated as well because computers are everywhere now. I mean, my stove has a computer in it, has Wi-Fi. I don't turn it on, but it has Wi-Fi.
Yep. And arguably it's got that display panel, so it's got a computer in it.
Correct.
So.
Yep. And I accidentally bump into the display panel all the time and try and turn the oven on by accident.
But I think this one also ties into number 2 a little bit.
Oh, wait, I wasn't done.
Oh, sorry.
I had one that I liked. When you secure things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
Oh, I meant quote number 3.
Oh, quote number 3 from the list.
Yeah. IoT without security equals Internet of Threats.
Yes. It's a good one.
Yep. Because you know what the S stands for in IoT?
There is no S or security in IoT.
The S in IoT stands for security.
True.
And there is no S.
I almost like that one better than the quote that's in there, Larry.
Yep.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, so
There is no S in IoT. Larry Pesci, November 3rd, 2021.
Yep. When you secure things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all. That's...
You know what?
That's not attributed to any person that said that, but...
But I've experienced this. I've experienced this. When I worked in healthcare many years ago, it got down to budget time.
And you were doing such a great job that no one was there. Was like security, like, well,
yeah, we were doing
right?
such a great job that when it came time to refresh some of our implementations that were now pushing 5 years old, and we're failing, and we're actively failing, they said, "Well, why do we need to invest any more in security? You're already doing a great job. Like, nothing's happened. You've spent 5 years doing this really amazing thing, and nothing's happened. So why do we need to do anything else?"
Which is just backwards logic.
Yep.
Yep.
So, yep.
Alrighty. So those were some quotes. Let's move on.
Big Harvard students using Idaho Solar was kind of funny.
What's that now?
Oh my God. So it wasn't Harvard students, but
Fake Harvard.
Yeah, I worked at a university. We had one of these systems. Many universities and colleges have these systems, and essentially, I think it's important to have some context because I think many people may have read this article and been like, "What are these universities thinking?" Right? But so when I worked, I mean, you listen to the show, you can probably figure out what university I worked at. Like, it's not a secret. So when I was at Brown University, administering Unix systems, I was like, "Why do we have this like big WordPress instance where all these people have accounts? Like, I'm really scared of this system right now." And again, I somewhat to my credit, I was like, I kind of want to understand the use case. Like, why does this need to exist? Because I really just want to go unplug this from the network right now, especially after multiple security incidents. And it's because you want to give students a place to host a website for things like their computing club, their sports club, the chess club, a sports team, an activity, a gathering, any type of activity, right? You want students in this educational learning environment to have a place to collaborate, right? And be hosted. I guess this was also before the time where it was a little harder to host a website anywhere, right? But you also, as a university, wanted to keep the stuff kind of close to, like, you wanted it to have that university or college kind of branded feel that this is like a Brown University chess club and we host our website, like here on campus, so that if they needed help with it, they could come to folks like us in IT and like get help with their website. And there was actually, I don't know how much I want to disclose about this. It was someone that you may have seen on the show that would actually help students with this particular website at the university. And, if they wanted stuff on their website, like, hey, we need people to be able to upload pictures to our website. Someone was there to help them, and it was all within the university environment. So that's why at places, in this example, like Harvard, students can go register for an account and they can host content which ends up living on Harvard.edu, which, guess what? That's got some pretty friggin' awesome reputation. Not like reputation in the sense that like it's Harvard, which is, of course, very well reputable school, but the domain has a very strong reputation for security. And it has a very strong ranking in terms of SEO. So what bad actors do, air quotes bad actors, will actually create accounts for fake students and then host like scammy kind of spammy stuff on the website. So where is my story on it? What is this one? Oh, my story number 8. So there's no Harvard student by the name Mikhail John. Instead, it was that was a fake persona, and they were selling SEO-friendly backlinks, and of course, using I mentioned that scammers advertise all sorts of things. So they were advertising for this. They listed like all the ridiculous things they were advertising for. One was synthetic urine, which I thought I didn't know that was a thing until I read the article that apparently it's used to test diapers and stuff. Among, I don't even want to venture to guess what else it's used. That's what I was thinking, that it's used. So it was used to implant for drug tests, and then I don't want.
Idaho Solar, that was a big one.
I don't want to know what else you would use synthetic urine for. We'll leave that to your imagination. But companies that place ads. The companies
it takes about $300 too to like grab one of these accounts, use it for the SEO.
Or so they're selling these.
Think about some of the
right.
You think about some of the big market pushes though. Think of something like a stock company or a tech company or even a crypto company. If someone came back and said, this company's biotech is legit, here's the stock that's going to go live, you could actually cause stocks to rise or fall, or even crypto. Things like COVID vaccines can cause, obviously, dissemination, misinformation, disinformation. And if you back that with something like an EDU, that makes it very difficult to recant any of those statements that mass media is going to pick up on and then reference. So it's kind of a big deal, and it's not a great way to have the EDU's reputation dragged through the dirt, where this stuff is available and easily abusable. Like, this is a common abuse that's used by attackers a lot.
But it even like works its way into the advertising and media buying. So like one company that was being advertised on Harvard's website was like, I know how some of this stuff works because it interfaces with some of the stuff CRA does and some of the stuff security, get into like talking to media companies, and I'd ask them like, what are some of the things you do? And they're like, we buy ads on websites. And so if you're a company trying to sell a product, you may go to a firm like the one in the article, T1 Advertising, and be like, go buy me a bunch of advertising space. I'm targeting this audience. Here's my ad. Like, just go buy a bunch of ads where you think people that might buy my product are going to be. And T1 Advertising went out and they paid air quotes media consultants, and lo and behold, some of their clients' ads end up on Harvard's website. So like it's been legitimized to the point where I don't know the whole story, like who knows like how deep the rabbit hole goes, but it kind of read to me like legit company just wants to sell their product like companies do. If you got a product to sell, you want to sell it to people, they go buy ads. Maybe this company contracts these media consultants, and they're like, hey, this one's doing really well. Like, they're giving us like really good results from their advertising. So like, give them more. Every time we get a client, give this media consultant, but that media consultant is buying for $300 accounts on university websites. to advertise product. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Well, I got another twist on it. I was just doing my cert on cloud-based pen testing. One of the things they talked about was Domain Hunter, where you're looking for, you purchase a neutral to good domain that's expired, so you can have a launch point. Well, if somebody like Harvard or another college just give you a free account, why bother? And then the whole idea is that good rep domains don't get blocked by CDN or other content filters, and you can do your thing.
Right.
Just kind of like, hey, wait a minute, let's go easy here.
That's why domain fronting was such a big deal, and subdomain takeover such a big deal, and even leveraging things like Azure hosting or SendMail, where you're leveraging a root domain of something like Amazon.com or Amazon SMS or Amazon Mail, any of those, or Azure Services.com. All of those things are easy to get services and platforms and VMs on that you can then use a domain assigned to you or subdomain assigned to you that comes with a high reputation. That's pretty much de facto one of the only ways to get into a lot of more secure environments.
Or you just find a university subdomain that's hosting WordPress and you hack it and you host your stuff there. Because I'm sure that still happens.
It's in my index.
Is it 588? Yeah,
yes.
that was a great class.
It's a great class. I delayed. I just passed the cert yesterday.
Woohoo! Congratulations.
Hey, congrats, Lee.
So, yes, that is a cool class. But in looking at how you scale up some of the stuff, I mean, we talk about in our various contests. It's interesting with the cloud scaled version of some of the stuff we talk about. It's crazy.
I think we should talk about Bidi overrides.
Yes.
So Krebs is the one that broke this article, I believe. It is research that was published in an academic paper from where did this come from? Where did this come from?
You and I both grabbed it.
Yeah.
You got the Krebs article. I got a different one.
There was a couple of university folks that weighed in on it. Where is it?
Darn it.
Trojansource.codes is the website they stood up. And they have a research paper. Admittedly, I did not read it, but this is the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. I saw
this in a couple of different places. I mean, I've got it. There's a Sakunut.net. We covered it in the Sans News Bites on Tuesday. I think it was. Or anyway, just the cool thing was you've got the difference between how a compiler reads the code and how a Unicode renderer displays the code.
Correct.
And that you encode the right stuff in it. You'll never see it on the screen, but the compiler just chews it in left to right. Sure will.
Obviously, some languages are left to right, some are right to left. And when you represent that in Unicode, you have facilities in Unicode to specify the order in which it's read. And that is the Bidi algorithm. What did Bidi? Hold on. What did
yes.
Bidi, it stood for something.
It's your number 11, Paul.
Unicode bidirectional algorithm is what it's short for, and that's like English, obviously left to right, Arabic right to left, and then you have to tell it like, hey, which direction should I be reading and or rendering this text in? But it includes an override so that you can tell the renderer and or compiler like which way to read this particular text. So the way Larry and I were talking about this right before the show, trying to understand it, was if you've got in source code, if you've got a comment, typically the beginning of the line from left to right, it starts with a comment character and then there's text after it. But if you make that source code and then you tell it via the Bidi algorithm to read it in right to left, it could interpret that as source code and as a way to basically Trojan what the research was stating in this paper
Yes.
and in this article was like most languages, if not all, could be susceptible to this kind of flaw. They did analyze a whole bunch of stuff and didn't like find anyone actually, an attacker actually using this. Although, I mean, you'd have to analyze every piece of source code, every line of source code that exists on the planet, which that could take some time.
No, you wouldn't have to analyze every line of source code. You'd only have to analyze the ones that have a pound sign or a comment symbol on the left-hand side.
Sure, potentially.
Now, and then have the code in those comments written in reverse.
Or look for specification of the Bidi algorithm, the override, if it had the override in it.
Yep. The other one, too, was that if they're injecting something into code that does some system call that is unexpected, you should be able to detect those types of things.
You got to be able to read it. You have to read it. You have to read the order of the Bidi algorithm, specify the override, and read it in that order. So,
well, I mean, if the code is executed, and it does the Bidi, and it takes those lines of code that should be comments but aren't because they're interpreted right to left. It will do something on your system.
Yeah, you've got to analyze it in the binary after it's compiled and or at runtime correctly.
Exactly, at runtime.
Right. But if you're looking at the source code with your editor or whatever your display tool is, it's not visible because it's overwritten it to look right. Which is you have to use some sort of static code analysis or something that's going to catch it. When it's compiled.
It's pretty cool.
And there was something I saw somewhere along the way that they're working on. The compiler folks want to fix this, but it's going to be a while.
I'd imagine there's a lot of testing. Like, you can theorize and implement a fix. There's a lot of testing that has to. God, bugs in the compiler. That's like the worst thing for a software developer. That's just horrible.
The guys that did this, they created a proof of concept in like 6 or 7 different coding languages: C, C++, C#, Python, Ruby, JavaScript, Java, and I forget what else. So they did a lot of good testing. That was actually really cool. They really did a nice job of researching this.
Yeah, and the Krebs article talks about Rust has released a security advisory, and other ones are coming soon, hopefully. Soon-ish. Yeah. Soon is a relative term. Yeah.
The Trojan source.code, which there's a link to it in the Krebs article, has all the gory details.
Super cool research, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty awesome. Microsoft did some really cool research as well. Did you guys read about Shrootless bypassing the system integrity protection in macOS, or SIP? SIP is a strong security technology in macOS that restricts a root user from performing operations that may compromise system integrity. Could that be, what would be the Linux equivalent? Would that be not AppArmor, but there are other GR security? There's like similar stuff in Linux that does that also in both ways too, right?
Where's Jay Beal when we need him?
Yeah, there's stuff in Linux that does this. When I read it, I was like, oh, this is like macOS's implementation of things in other operating systems that would do similar things, right? I don't think this is a novel thing for an operating system. I think most operating systems, if not all, have something similar. So they discovered the vulnerability. They were looking at ways to bypass SIP protections. It's been kind of a long history that they outline in there, but the crux of it came down to a post-install script in an Apple package runs ZSH, runs in the shell ZSH, Z shell, and then Z shell by default, the default shell by default looks in the file etc ZSH env. If found, will run any commands in that file automatically, and that was kind of the undoing in this particular scenario. So like basically, BSD trickery, Unix BSD Linux trickery to get by this particular. The article is very well written and very detailed, and you can go read it. It's my story number 10. Yeah, there's also the process system install D is the one that executes the package, and then if the package has a post install script, executes that, and by default, because it executes in Z shell, will execute what's in the environment file, which makes sense. I mean, that's how a lot of the shells work, right? They have your environment file gets loaded by default.
How about the blockchain-backed IoT camera?
I was just reading that.
Such a crap. I was so disappointed in this article, but I left it in there in case you guys did want to talk about it. The article just talks about how awesome this camera is and says nothing about how they're implementing blockchain.
IoTex. That is how they're...
IoTex blockchain via a private key backed by the blockchain, decrypted on the mobile device from the blockchain.
Yep.
Which, I don't know what you're gaining by freaking dumping this to a blockchain.
They said in the article that it grants you complete ownership of all the footage. But is your footage stored in the cloud that your app accesses, or that's what I couldn't get?
UCAM offers flexible storage options as well, including cloud storage for motion detection, clips, and micro SD for continuous video recording.
But if you're not home,
own clips?
But if you're not, where does your app connect to was my question, right? You set this thing up and you got an app on your phone. If you're not home, where does your app connect to? Do you have to poke a hole in your firewall for it to talk directly?
It's just like all of the other devices. You look at Ring, you look at Waze,
Yep.
You look at any of these, like especially the cheap IoT cameras that are out there. They connect back to a centralized server. The app makes an API call. The API call hook to the stream through UPnP back to the camera.
I got you.
That is all on a central server. Your clips are all.
It's like basically the C2 channel goes up through the cloud, but your data stored on the device and encrypted and decrypted accordingly with key. Or in this case, blockchain. What's that?
Stored on the cloud. So the storage is almost always up on the cloud. You look at something like Waze, and even the cached storage or motion detection sensors is not. It is stored locally, but it is also uploaded instantly to the API on the cloud. This is something I've seen pretty heavily. And, take that how you will. Like SSL is encrypting it to the cloud, but basically they can look through whatever the hell they want on the server.
Yep.
So I can see some of this being kind of cool from a backing standpoint of encryption, but do we really need to add the complexity of a blockchain-backed protocol to do a private key and encrypt the data? That seems like an extensive step. I mean, I guess at that point you can attribute that your data is fully encrypted and backed by the algorithm. If you read through the algorithm and it's open source and you're able to decipher that kind of algorithm, yeah, maybe that smart contract and how those negotiations are happening is, more than secure than some of the other devices. But this seems way overly complicated to use blockchain to do this. Although this is a lot of stuff's going.
It's more secure because it's blockchain.
Yep.
I don't fully disagree. There's a lot of advantages to blockchain, but it's so complicated that no one cares. No one cares. Whether it's S3 a back server, there's encryption, it's ES back. All of this is BS and smoke and mirrors to the general.
Yep. I
can we talk about more BS and smoke and mirrors next?
Real quick.
Yes.
Tyler, I think you're right on it's smoke and mirrors and it's BS for now. I think this is going to get bigger in the IoT market. I mean, reading through IoTech's stuff, their about page, one of the things that just grabbed me, there was 4 words that grabbed me out of that, which was the Internet of Trusted Things.
Yes.
And I think blockchain can do that trusted part. So that I think is going to become important in the very near future.
There's a lot of great models for secure IoT architecture, right? Microsoft used to call it Azure Sphere. Did they rename that?
They did, and they bought Binwalk Pro, and now they've got a whole IoT security product, and you can't get access to Binwalk anymore.
Oh,
Binwalk
really?
Binwalk. I mean, you can get access to Binwalk open source, but they had that pro version. It's kind of like the Metasploit model, where the commercial version supports the open source.
Because they bought Hefner's company.
Yeah, they bought Refirm Labs.
Yeah. Okay.
So Binwalk Pro and Binwalk Enterprise are no more. They just redirects you to their Microsoft IoT solutions page.
That's testing, not the architectural implementation.
Oh, it's architectural implementation too.
It is. Okay, so they're merging. They're
bringing all that
because we
together.
had an expert from Microsoft, right? That
we did
talked about Azure Sphere.
Yes,
and there's other companies and other models too that will give you like a blueprint, which oftentimes requires specialized hardware too to complete that chain between IoT device, the cloud, the hardware on the IoT device, the software on the IoT device, software in the cloud.
Microsoft Azure Defender for IoT.
Oh, of course,
because that just rolls off the tongue.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is not uncommon with blockchain, right? Like, I do believe there's a ton of advantages for disparate technologies like, IoT, where we do offload a lot of that, specialized hardware that was required in order to work on the security side, which is via blockchain. You look at things like smart contracts, right? Like, you're making code that is a contract that has financial and physical aspects that get executed and is irrefutable and attributable. That's pretty advantageous for financial markets. So all these things like that are backed by blockchain, I wasn't a huge believer until I started to see all the things that already are backed and then kind of where those are going to go. There's a ton of potential that you kind of have to start to understand how big this is and why this market isn't going away now.
Yep.
Speaking of BS and other things, Lee, I wanted to talk about your story number 11, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, Talus and 451 research, but I think this is really funny because this article, I think, wins article of the year for the most quoted statistics in any article. 83% of businesses are still failing to encrypt half of the sensitive data they store in the cloud. 40% of organizations have experienced a cloud-based data breach in the past 12 months. 57% of the respondents reported they make use of 2 or more cloud infrastructure providers. 24% of organizations flagged that the majority of their workloads and data now reside in the cloud. Oh, no. I can go on because 21% of businesses host the majority of their sensitive data in the cloud. 40%, however, reported a breach in the last year. It's like, what? My brain hurt.
Numbers.
How did you
math
come up with that many stats? And then if you want to go download the report, you've got to register for it. And your phone number is required to get the report. I'm like,
23% of people won't register.
Don't worry.
Yeah. 1-401-555-1212
will be stored securely in the cloud.
Oh my God. Yeah, wait, what percentage of my data is securely stored in the cloud when I register for this report?
And how much are they storing of it?
Is there a 78% chance that someone's going to call me and try and sell me something if I register for this report?
No, but there's a 52% chance that their storage isn't secure and it's going to get compromised. Right. Although arguably they're not part of the 40% of the small business. Sorry, Lee.
Only 17% of those surveyed have encrypted more than half of the data that they store in the cloud.
What the shit?
Because they gave them a phone number and they called them and found out. Lee, you had something in there?
No, I was just going to say, normally HelpNet security is not that bad, but this is
HelpNet security is a great resource. Agreed.
I mean, my takeaway from this is make sure your shit's protected. I mean, go verify that you are encrypting
100% of it.
I mean, 35% are using their own encryption, and 55% are using the cloud provider's encryption.
Good God.
What is that even?
Is there a punchline at the like? Did we read this to see if there's a punchline at the end that says?
Yeah, are they just trolling us? No, this is like a legit report.
It's legit.
451 did the survey. I know because we've done these kind of surveys. So you do the survey and you look at all the results and you draw. We did PlexTrack. We did one with PlexTrack, right? And so I mean, there's varying degrees of surveys that are out there.
And the reality is, you can do whatever you want with statistics. I mean, there was a book in school, How to Lie with Statistics.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, 48% of business leaders globally admitted their organization does not have a zero trust strategy.
And 78% of all the statistics you read on the internet are all made up.
yeah.
Oh, but there's
guys
even more. Like the
house-
more you read, 46% of global respondents claimed managing privacy and data protection in the cloud is more complex than on-premises solutions. Like, how would you draw any meaningful conclusions from this many statistics when I got to look at the data from the. I got to see even what questions were asked and who they surveyed and how they asked the question. And even at that, like this many questions on this many different topics, like it's just, the whole thing is just exhausting. It's exhausting.
I think at the end of this whole article, Paul, that the end result is really that 83% of us are fucked.
Well, just in 37.4% of our listeners are laughing their ass off at this article.
And 7% are yelling at the radio in their car.
To stop. No more statistics. No, just stop. We've reached the statistic quota for this show because 73% of our shows have mentioned this.
Christ.
82.3% of the articles today do not involve statistics.
Oh my God. That was a lot of statistics. Like I'm tired from that article.
But only 52% tired.
Yes.
I think I owe you a drink, Paul.
Oh God, I was glad you had found that one because it was good for a humorous moment. So.
Lee had tons of stories about ransomware and
what percentage of these stories were?
Honestly, I want to say about 20%.
30%, 32% of these stories were ransomware.
Yeah.
Yes. Lee's stories today were brought to you by the letter FBI.
Yes. Hello Kitty. I like Hello Kitty ransomware. Shit. Hello Kitty ransomware sounds so cute. Like I couldn't even get.
I know.
Mad.
I had to put that one in there just because.
I'm like, we got hacked and they put Hello Kitty ransomware on there. I'm like, it was so cute.
Or the pink bot. Like everything's so fluffy this week.
Mm-hmm.
The pink IoT bot for denial of service is actually pretty. It's pretty impressive.
It is.
The pink botnet malware.
Yeah. 1.6 million devices, most of those in China, and most of those on MIPS devices, which is very interesting.
100 mainly, so 99.9% targeting MIPS devices.
Technically 99.8, but yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No, MIPS is an interesting platform because it does large volumes of packets per second, very optimized. Think of like an ASCII miner. The MIPS platform will do, on minor hardware, will do 1 million packets per second. So you think of that.
Like a Linksys router. I mean, almost all were all Linksys routers MIPS based, Larry, or did they have one or two that were ARM?
They were MIPS based.
It was after was it V3 that they went MIPS?
I think some of the early ones might have been ARM. A couple in there, but most of them were MIPS based, largely because. Correct me if I'm wrong, the MIPS socks are pretty cheap to make, right? Because they're putting out a router in there like sub $50 in some cases. Back in the day, I don't know what it's like now, but like they're cheap devices.
They're cheaper.
Right? MIPS socks are cheap and they're easy to kind of get that firmware on there, right? Broadcom
optimized routing too.
Yes,
is the big thing. Yeah,
well, the socks had. We wrote the book about it, right? The socks had the LAN and CPU and the Wi-Fi. Like the Wi-Fi CPU, not the radio, right? The radio was separate, and that's where you attached your antenna. But the processing of the Wi-Fi was done right on the sock. Is that maybe that's not all models?
Nope.
But
The Wi-Fi was built into the system on a chip.
Okay,
it was an all-in-one package. The only thing that was separate was the memory.
Gotcha. Yep. Gotcha. And the connection point was for the antennas, basically. Were for the
that's where you put things like RouterOS. RouterOS had a bunch of devices where they were doing MIPS cloud, like your edge gateways, a lot of your fiber routers, MikroTiks, which run a good portion of the internet.
Some of the Cisco stuff, was some of the Cisco stuff MIPS as well?
Not usually. No, those were usually x86 or ARM, which was a big distinguishing factor for MikroTik, which is why they were used for backbones.
Right.
You had the internal LAN, which also had to deal with encryption and VLANs and QoS stuff that all required, x86, where it's a lot more processor intensive. MIPS was a more or less a router intensive chip that could do large volumes of packets per second and route them optimized without having to worry about that layer 3 and 4 traffic.
Cisco was producing obviously enterprise gear, and a lot of that, the larger stuff used FPGAs. They just went right to FPGAs. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so this 1.6 million...
did you just catch a fly live on camera? It looked like you just caught a fly live on camera with your hand.
I did. It's pretty nasty, actually.
But he didn't use Hashi.
That was epic.
He didn't use chopsticks.
Yeah, you could use chopsticks next time.
Hashi.
Challenge.
Next time, chopstick it.
I do think, because there's lots of different versions of MIPS, and it was always interesting to watch Tyler try and catch the fly, which apparently he missed the first time. But it was always interesting to see malware, which version of MIPS you would support, right? Because there's a whole bunch of different MIPS-based architectures, and IoT devices tended to use the wide spectrum of them. So I do think it's interesting that this was this ransomware, or was this just a botnet?
It's a DDoS botnet, so they're able to do large volumes of botnet. Most of the devices that were owned were in China, which is also very interesting, whether or not those devices were built into the chip, if the
state supported in manufacturing.
Vulnerability, the vulnerability was built in there, was known and shipped out, and they knew the volume, and therefore were utilizing them for the DDoS stuff that their state-sponsored actors tend to use for very specific reasons.
Interesting.
Was it a vulnerability they were exploiting, or was it just a backdoor? Was it China was we're going to put a backdoor and all this stuff?
They didn't really say. They actually decrypted the C2 channels, which leverage things like Git, things that we talked about earlier, where they're using platforms like Azure. And they found the C2, they found some of the stagers, and they found the backdoor for comms and kind of botnet harvesting. So your bot herder or your C2 platforms, those were all using very distributed networks that were high resiliency. So also very interesting.
Another interesting thing I was reading about this in one article, that they were folks were trying to patch their routers. Then they were able to real time detect it and patch their C2 stuff such that they could keep ahead of the people trying to patch to get it out of there.
Yeah. So we're looking at that article. There's a comment there that they were breaking into devices to install malicious programs by taking advantage of zero-day vulnerabilities in the network gateway devices, and a significant chunk has already been repaired and restored to the previous state, but still about 100,000 nodes are still active.
Yeah, they were patching live. They were patching MIPS firmware systems live as patches were rolling out and establishing persistence and reoccurring backdoors for the firmware being patched. That's a pretty high level.
So they were persistent inside of a MIPS device in the firmware, because Yes. I did forensics on a Linksys router.
I remember
that?
I do.
In 2007. And it was one of the first occurrences where
it was
right there was network traffic. They were this device is hacked, and
it's all in memory.
It was all in memory. So once they removed the power from it, all evidence was gone.
Yep, I remember this. I helped you a little bit with that. Yeah,
state actors definitely did not utilize those for bounce devices in the memory.
Right.
Yeah, I mean this is a very similar. This is a much larger scale MIPS. It's kind of the same theory, right? You're leveraging these open devices to bounce traffic and route traffic through in memory in order to utilize and have that high distribution, high resiliency network across multiple nodes and IPs. This is classic good actor, OPSEC, and nation state level, comms and TTPs.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the funny thing about this is, I was reading this. I had been doing some research for a presentation I put together, looking back to when I was administering MIPS machines running Unix, which were running their UMIPS RISC OS. And it's like, what a difference we went from. I mean, they were a wicked bad CPU back then, 30 years ago, and now look what we're doing. This is really cool.
Just got to find the right application for them.
Was it IRIX? Was IRIX based on MIPS?
Oh, yes. I'm trying to remember. I'm almost positive.
Yes,
IRIX
the
meaning-
SGI IRIX.
Yeah.
Yes, those were MIPS-based machines.
Interesting.
Remember SGI bought MIPS.
Those was the most beautiful computers.
Oh my gosh.
They were purple. They were beautiful. I had one of the pizza boxes too. It was awesome.
They were crazy powerful. The stuff you could do on the graphics card
Yeah.
was amazing back then. I mean, yes, today it's like nothing, but back then it was just holy shit.
Yep.
Yeah, Lee,
You could even render audio.
Lee, you got some feed. It's your Cyloning again.
Uh-oh.
You could render audio as a robot. Back then,
Yeah.
on a graphic.
Now that reminds me of when we start talking about that architecture and the amazing things you could do with graphics back then was the Commodore Amiga. And was that MIPS as well? I don't remember, but I had an A1000 back in the day, about 1986, 1987, and it was amazing. And the A1000 was used in broadcast television for like doing what we do with lower thirds and that type of stuff nowadays with super simple stuff. And that was an amazing machine to game on at the time. That monitor could support so many colors and their output. In fact, the output could generate more shades of gray than the human eye could discern, which in my mind was pretty damn impressive for 1986. But
That's like 50 Shades of Grey.
wait, what?
Printers hacked for the first time, pwn to own, or the dude's house stolen. Either one is
what I thought was interesting about the printer one, and I'm really interested to see the research, because when I was looking into, I mean, I've looked into printer hacking
Forever.
at like a lot of different points in my life, and for various reasons too. And it's kind of, I find it really interesting, but I want to see their research because some of the HP stuff specifically uses PJL to load the firmware or like is the I think it was the firmware loader was written in P. So you had to like reverse engineer PJL to like get at what the actual firmware was on the HP printers. I did find another article. Someone wrote a really cool article on reverse engineering HP printer firmware that the last time I had looked, so this article was published in 2020, and so like the last time I looked into it was probably 5+ years ago, and like I didn't find out, again, I just did a cursory kind of search. I didn't like go crazy, but like I couldn't find anything readily available that was reverse engineering printer firmware that uses PJL. I was like, there was nothing available for that, and I was like, well, that's kind of a fun academic exercise.
Well, we know that people have done some reverse engineering of PJL. I can't remember the German guy's name.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. So there was updates to that. So one of the last times I looked at it was the result was every time you printed something through a printer here in the office, I could overlay ASCII art on it. So just use your imagination and figure out what was being printed on every single printout, to the point where Sam was like, can we not have ASCII art penises on everything we print out now?
Like the invoice that we need to fax to a customer. Yeah.
I'm like, let me just go remove that quick.
Yep.
And that was based on research that I forget that had come out and I was working with. And I was like, that was really cool. There were some limitations. It was very, very specific to the device and the type of firmware, which is why I'm really interested to see what's being done now on these printers. So they did, I think, a Canon. Was it a Canon one? Or was it Canon? Yeah, Canon image class printer. Okay. And they did an HP Color LaserJet. So curious to see how, and they won a pwn to own in Austin for their work, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm interested to see some more industrial versions or commercial class versions of these printers. Like I just got done doing a ton of work on Ricoh, some of the Sharp stuff, like all of the multifunction devices. Like we've got at least a dozen ways to abuse the multifunction devices for relay attacks, credential abuse, extracting configs, firmware dumping. Like anonymous FTP is open on some of these, that you can actually dump the bin file directly out of the temporary storage location. So all the extra work they're doing on some of these is kind of cool, but what we see commonly in the wild with these multifunction devices, especially like the copier, scanner, print, the full things, those are much more vulnerable to very, very simple attacks. So,
and usually not exfil of what's going through it. That's very like model specific. It's really in my research, like you can't find anything universal that's like, I'm gonna drop this on your printer or multifunction device. That means any document going through it, whether it's printed, whether it's scanned, I mean, no one really faxes anymore, right? But any piece of paper or print job or job that's going through it, I get a copy of. To me, that's the ultimate attack with printers, because even still today in 2021, like there's stuff that goes through these devices that's really, really sensitive.
So that's the catch, right? Like with most of these, you look at something like a Ricoh. That's a common attack. Default creds on the admin account allows you to have a multi-purpose account that all the scan jobs, all the print jobs, all the print functions, you can download those in PDF. You can pull them from the repo. You can actually have them send a forwarded copy to the admin email if it's set up. So using and abusing the functionality built right into the administration functions of these multi-factor or multifunction devices are much more easy than the exploit of having underlying code running in the firmware. Now, that being said, there is C2, and we've abused several of these printers that sit on the internet, like common EDUs put these out on the internet for printing. We can actually have C2 go in and out and use these as a reverse proxy or an SSH proxy.
And that's very model and manufacturer specific, right?
Very. Almost every time.
And it's even interesting, like if you look at your basic HP laser printer, typically it listens on multiple different protocols. It's IPP, it's LPT, thank you, which is like 515 or something like that. But like each one of those printing interfaces, you would have to hijack those functions within the firmware to get, like, so in other words, a print job that goes through IPP, you're not going to get if you've hijacked the process for LPT. It's just like a totally different subsystem is what I found.
Yep. So the admin account's much more valuable, where you're just getting it at the administration level of the kernel level rootkit the administrator.
If it has that functionality, though, that's the problem I read. Like if it does have that functionality, that's great, but that functionality differs across manufacturers and models so greatly.
Which the next iteration of this attack, this is actually a talk I'm working on, is leveraging the now multifunction device management, which is Active Directory integrated, that hooks into all of these printers at the management level and has that admin across multiple model versions for click rates, scanned documents, certain office metrics, the ability to look at documents, pull down configs, upload configs. So leveraging the management portion of that software in order to control these devices and gain, essentially God rights over multiple. It's like Active Directory for printers. Yeah. Multiple devices across the management interface.
It was like and I think still it would be a really successful attack. Like I used to plug in on a pen test, right? Go scan for open shares and go which ones were on printers and multifunction devices, download me everything in that share, and in the first 3 minutes of a pen test, have a PDF or a document or a printout, like here's social security numbers of some of your users because that's what you needed to print or scan or fax or whatever, right? It was usually that's where the most sensitive information. But like printers that have that information plus an open SMB share are, again, very, very like specific. It's not ubiquitous. It's like very nichey.
Yeah, credentials being saved on those devices. Again, these are prime time. Like this is, I would say this is not a hot new topic. This is something that is been a problem for a very long time, but is more of a problem because gaining credentials in a network, once you gain access to that network, is more difficult. These printers are almost always open. Those credentials are almost always stored within inside the memory of those printers. You can dump that memory and or do a relay attack with the credentials saved in that printer. That's straightforward.
So I hope we get to see some of this research. That I'm assuming that they paid it out as part of Pwn to Own, and they didn't know about it until the Pwn to Own event. So the manufacturers and the vendors are going to have to fix that stuff, and then once it's fixed, hopefully these researchers release what they found. I hope. It's my hope. What was the other one? Oh, a guy lost his house, dude.
What?
Yeah.
Did he get up and walk away?
What? No, got back. I don't know exactly what triggered. Like if he was just coming home.
This is great. So he lost his identity, right? Like
didn't know that he lost his identity though.
Yeah, people always say like, "What's the risk?" I don't have anything that hackers are going to want. Like I'm not a high target. Like what does it matter if my identity's stolen?
He was away. That's the thing. He was away. They didn't say like details, right? He was away from his property and working in North Wales, and then he got a call from his neighbors like, all your stuff's leaving the house and these new people are moving in. Like, did you move? And he's like, no.
What are you talking about?
Then like gets home. Like picture this. You get home, the locks are all changed, and like your wife's not there. Like she didn't kick you out. Like I think someone lived by themselves. Like you get home and like your keys don't work and shit. And you got to ring the doorbell in your own house, and some stranger answers the door. And this dude just like walked in, but the other dude like called the cops and like, no, this is not your house anymore, because like legally on paperwork, like on paper, it's not this dude's house anymore because they stole his identity and sold his house.
And then the guy that bought it back underneath the same assumed name as him.
What?
That was like salt in the wound. Yeah.
Wait, say that again.
Wait, say that again.
So the guy bought it back in the same name as the guy's identity that was stolen.
Oh.
What?
Yeah, it was towards the end of the article.
It's like the guy that stole his identity bought it back with the stolen identity.
I don't know if it was with the stolen identity or with the same name as the assumed identity.
Oh, jeez.
This is a fantastic. I mean, it's horrible. Like I feel really bad because like this is civil action at this point. You've got to hire a lawyer. You've got time out of your house. All your possessions are gone, and there's really nothing you can do because legally on paperwork, the person that stole your identity was legally assumed you. Like there's nothing you can do for recourse.
Yeah, I mean They say this kind of fraud is not like super common, but like totally,
it's hard to pull off.
Talk about impactful to this poor dude.
Yeah.
Like that really sucks.
Having just gone through like the escrow and like all of the legal paperwork, title searches, deeds, like just got done doing that this last week. And like to pull this off, you've got to know the system pretty well, and you have to know a little bit of the loopholes around it. And this is way more lucrative than, stolen identity only goes for maybe $5 on the dark net if it's a high net value, high net worth person.
No, it's a good
that
point.
comes with some credit. So, not much money.
Right.
You sell a house. This house supposedly was worth, 3.5 million euros? That's a pretty decent.
And with the housing market today, at least in the U.S., I'm not sure what it looks like in other countries, right? But that's a really lucrative thing. I mean, houses are selling for 30, 40, 50, 100%, like a lot more than they were selling a year ago.
On closing, you get your money on closing, and so the ramifications of having money recanted or pooled, like that's a wired check as part of the closing and escrow.
Yep.
Like, that's the process. So this is a low risk, low probability of they're gonna go to legal court. The guy may get his house back, but like someone's out the money. And it's probably either the realty company or the mortgage company that held the lien. So, the attacker is getting his money.
The house sold for £131,000, which is about $180,000.
Oh, okay.
That,
Still, way more than you can sell an identity for, or think about how to monetize a stolen identity. Getting 180 grand is pretty good.
The 3.5 million was the what the UK Land Registry paid out for in compensation for fraud.
Interesting. How would you deal with taxes on a stolen identity? How does that work?
Because that's going to come back to haunt it. Because
you make away with the money, but now that dude's going to get stuck with the income tax bill for selling his house.
Right, that dude's going to get stuck with the capital gains, like what would be capital gains here in the U.S., right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but yeah.
That
in terms
sucks.
of taxes, but
Hopefully the attacker, anyways, there like at least sent the money to a trust or something, because then they won't get nailed with the capital gains. Or, I mean, I'm not a tax lawyer.
Sheltered my stolen identity income.
I mean, if you're going to go that far, you might as well go all the way. Right? Jeez.
Good Lord. That's a suck-ass situation.
Yep.
My story number 13 really it wasn't as so I don't understand how this gaming platform works. So Amazon New World, Amazon New World, is New World the game or the platform?
It's the
Amazon Games. It's the game. Amazon Game Studio creates these like cloud-based game. I'm assuming most games are largely cloud-based, right? In certain aspects, but so New World is the game, but New World had, I don't know if it was a chat or just they said text boxes in the game. The article wasn't very good at describing this. It's like the chat
and the dialogue for the game.
I would assume it's the chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could just put in HTML and it wasn't sanitized.
Yep.
So the way I read this was like, if your game is interpreting that and it's running on your client, that means this HTML code is running in the context of the client, but it turns out it was running in the context of the kind of back to your IoT kind of similar thing, right? Like it's not running in the context of the local device, it's running in the context of the server, and just those messages are being relayed back from the game server back to the client. But they did the HTML was unsanitized, which they described as ashamed of themselves for a code injection vulnerability.
They should be. This is web dev 101.
Right.
Now, did someone actually use this for something awesome and nefarious? Like, this seems like a great place, to mine. Like, I would put bot miners in there that ran on the cloud devices.
Oh, hell yeah.
Power.
Well, so right now they've effectively done remote access to people's computers, install keyloggers, install viruses, ransomware, and delete the entire Windows install. Potential for, but effectively what they were doing for now is chat denial of service. They were able to upload some scripts that effectively did gold mining for infinite gold, so they could max it out.
You sound like script kiddies. Like, honestly, this seems like a lot of power to do stupid.
Yeah, we could have done way more interesting stuff.
Yeah, a little bit of Ethereum mining or Monero mining on the browser inside the context of the cloud. That seems way more useful than. So
Tyler, let's put it this way: we had a discussion about this the other day, and that it's still open. Many of the exploits or issues are poorly patched to the point it almost doesn't understand what the problem is, and that the platform is still ripe for exploitation.
Interesting.
Of course.
Okay.
Just saying. Saying.
After doing this show and being in the industry this long, I feel like I read the same article now every week, and this one came to fruition in what small businesses can do to thwart the top 5 cybersecurity issues.
Oh, Christ. Okay.
And it's like...
What did they put for the top 5?
So here's the thing. This is...
Don't buy a computer.
Very...
Don't turn on your computer.
Yeah, but it's very cookie cutter, very bland, tired, old, not just description of the problems, but also advice that we see. And I guess my kind of challenge to ourselves and our audience is, what do we do to change this narrative? Because more and more I'm seeing week after week, not just one, but multiple articles that are essentially like this, top 5 threats and top 5 things you can do to thwart them. And so the narrative currently is very much this: educate your managers and your employees. So security awareness and training. Keep your software and systems up to date. Like, we haven't heard that before. Ensure endpoint protection, install a firewall, and back up your data. Like,
but how?
How do we change? Now, I mean, not change the narrative, but apply a different and better context to the narrative to break down these essentials, to make these.
Security's not new. Like, we know the problem.
Yeah, this is like treating exactly, Tyler. That's why I'm like really infuriated by it, because like they're treating it like this is something new that you should be doing. Yeah. Like, this is something you have to do whether your business is 100 years old or you just started yesterday. You need to do all of these things.
Just started yesterday. It's on startupnation.com, which is interesting. The other one I find some interesting, I read into some of the other underlying stuff, and I'm reading through this article, and I'm like, what the heck? That's weird. So, number one, for the top cybersecurity issues, there's 5 of them. One, if you were like doing this old school HTML, is H1 tag.
Yeah.
Insider threats. 2, H1 tag. Malware attacks. 3, H1 tag. Phishing attacks. 4, H4 ransomware. 5, weak passwords. H1 tag. Like, ransomware Insider threat is number 1.
I mean, that says something about.
According to Verizon's 2021 Verizon's DBIR, 44% of small businesses' cyber threats are caused by internal actors.
If you're a small business, and insider threat is your number one thing, like, you're doing shit wrong when it comes to security.
You're already in trouble.
What do they say? What do they say? Don't do business with family.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Oh,
I don't want to spoil the story that we've got coming up with one of our mutual friends who most of us learned lockpicking from Deviant, right? And Deviant, I was asking about like stories. I'm like, dude, I want to hear stories from physical pen tests, right? And he the one he highlighted, which I won't spoil, but like he highlighted the fact that like if you've got employees that are dedicated to the cause, right? Like they like their jobs, they like the company, they like the people they work with, they like their role, they feel compensated, engaged. That speaks volumes to your not just cybersecurity, but physical security, like your overall security as well, because employees got your back as a business, right? And that's really the when I talk about building a security culture, I think that's really a culture in a generic sense, that you need to build a positive culture for everyone that works for and supports your organization. And that is going to do more for the security of your business and data and all of those things really than anything else. And that's not a I'm checking off stuff on a checklist, compliant, I got a firewall. That's like none of those things, right? Like that's a grassroots kind of like how we want to be as a company thing, which is interesting.
Right.
And that's hard. That's hard.
Culture is the single way that companies can affect cybersecurity quickly. Yeah. There's no other real good way. Like, I'll always get in physically. I'll always get in via phishing. Culture, once you start to adopt a secure culture and people actually start thinking from the janitor all the way up to the CEO, top down and bottom up, that's when places start to become much more difficult targets.
Dude, right? Like, it's our worst nightmare as pen testers. Like, regardless of what you're pen testing or how you're pen testing it, I think our worst nightmare as pen testers are those employees that are just, they're all about their jobs.
When the janitor starts asking to see credentials and calling people to validate.
Like I'm in for a world of hurt on this. And that could be people looking at emails and phishing and stuff like that. They're like, I don't trust that. That's not right. And it doesn't matter what phishing attack you have. They're just like, no, like that's not right.
Yeah, and even legitimate email.
Right? Yeah, even legitimate email.
Yep,
sure.
Totally.
And that's why I pick on the cybersecurity training and awareness kind of thing, because I feel like it's trying to artificially build that. And I think artificially building that is the wrong approach. That needs to be an organic thing that's built into your culture.
Culturally, with inside the company, from the top down and the bottom up, like artificially, you cannot. In fact, that is probably, I mean, you nailed it right there. That is singularly why I really hate user awareness training, is because it is fake. It is
Yes.
the fake smile. It's the ladies in California. It's the what do they call those? The housewives, the Orange County housewives. That's what they are. It's fake.
I was telling Deviant, and I think this really relates to what we're talking about, right? And I said, when I first met you, Dev, like I fell in love with you and lockpicking like all in one fell swoop, and so much so that all of us here at Security Weekly, right? Anyone that comes and joins the Security Weekly family as a host, contractor, employee, like intern, whatever, we all teach each other lockpicking. Like that's just one thing that we do. And to me, that's more of a powerful cybersecurity awareness thing than a lot of that training that's out there. Like you all know that the look on someone's face when they first pick a lock is priceless. I mean, it's priceless. Like they get this notion that like something that's supposed to keep me out is so easily bypassed with like a little knowledge and a little bit of training. Like it doesn't take much to take people through like the first 5 in the practice lock set, right? And teach them the fundamentals and basics. And I show them the tool kind of tutorials, like here's the basics how a lock works. Okay, like let's go do it. Like it doesn't take that much time at all. And then like they're hooked and like the look on their face and they're like, that's awesome. And they have this realization like locks don't keep people out like that.
It shatters their security boundaries. It really shatters their mental awareness of what security really means and how protection actually happens.
Yep. So that story to that Layer 8 conference. 2 years ago. Almost 3 years ago now.
The one before the pandemic.
Yep. I was there.
The stress and burnout, the mental health. What's her?
Amanda Berlin.
Amanda was here. I brought at that time Jack was our intern. And I brought my son to that conference. Yep.
And Corinne and our two daughters.
It was a family event. Yeah.
And they wanted to check out the Lockpick Village, and they spent like 2 hours in Lockpick Village. And it was amazing because the tool folks, one of the tool folks sat down with Orion, who was 6. And they sat with her for like an hour and a half, and they popped lock after lock after lock. And Corinne got like, after our oldest, who was 11 at the time, was basically like, boop, boop, boop. Wait, what?
Like, what did I just do?
How did I do that? And she literally sat there. She turned her baseball hat around backwards because that was what she was doing at the time, because that was the fashion that she was into. And she sat there for an hour and a half and picked locks. And I came back from DEF CON that year and brought them both lockpick sets and practice locks. They haven't used them much since, but every once in a while, the little one, who's 8 now, almost 9, like, oh, hey, this is in my drawer. And you go up in her bedroom at bedtime and there's locks and lockpicks on her desk. It's like,
yep, it's a thing. But I think it's a valuable tool. Better than most cybersecurity awareness programs, in my opinion.
Yep.
There was a DNS I love bind exploits. Those that know my history, like bind exploits were some of the ways that got me further in this field, very much near and dear to my heart. There is this concept of a lame cache. If an authoritative DNS server responds with an authoritative answer, but that answer is like corrupt or wrong in some way, the recursive servers, right, will say like, oh, that was a bad response, so I'm going to put that in the lame cache. So future clients that ask for that don't get a lame response, right? And there's like a timeout for that. And there's some vulnerability in that logic inside of the code, inside of bind, that it will consume an enormous amount of CPU if you can spoof. I believe they didn't like get into like exactly how it was exploited, but I would assume if you can spoof those, right, you could cause your resolver to consume a number of CPU resource, like a lot of CPU resources, and effectively DOS the client. So that is tunable. You can set lame-TTL to 0, and it will turn that feature off. ISC is recommending that you do that because they feel like it has little to no impact if you change that setting. So Some DNS nerdery right there.
Oh,
Good stuff. Let's see. Was there another? I should have added more funny stories.
well,
Lee, did you have another story before we get to our last
well,
one?
I was just thinking, as we were talking about the five business, whatever. One of the things that popped out to me was my number 2, where the FBI director's talking to folks about what they can do, and the thing that I was recognizing as old is new again is build the relationship with your law enforcement before you need them. I mean, we used to say that all the time 20 years ago. I think it's kind of gone by the wayside. But with the ransomware stuff, I'm like, yeah, and if you're a small business and you don't have a relationship with who are going to investigate something going wrong, you need that.
Yep.
And it's free.
Yep. InfraGard, local FBI field office, all that type of stuff. I was more laughing at the fact that, Lee, you said that your number 2 just popped right out. It's like, a guy for your age, like, man.
Is that like Joe Biden? That was something that tried to trend when he met with the Pope kind of thing. It was not deemed to be true. It was a rumor from what I gathered. But
what about bowel movements? Wow.
Yeah.
Getting old isn't for wusses.
No, it's not. I'm finding that out very hard this week.
Damn it, we had fun getting this old.
Lee, but to your point, when I first started at the university, one thing that my coworkers made certain was that I was introduced to whomever was the law enforcement agent at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm so old that at that time, in 2001, the Secret Service was still very involved with cybercrime. In fact, they were like one of the largest kind of law enforcement agencies at a federal level at the time that were actively going after they were going after hackers, right? If you look back at hacker history in like the 90s, I don't know if 80s, but certainly like 90s and early 2000s, Secret Service was like the agency.
FBI as well, because I remember
FBI as well, but Secret Service was involved heavily in that.
Because I remember doing the InfraGard thing and becoming a member of InfraGard during that time when we started meeting each other, and that I ended up, having some meetings with the local FBI office, and why I don't remember the name, but FBI Special Agent Holly Steves.
Yeah, I remember it was Agent Mooney of the Secret Service, and he was the nicest guy in the world.
Yep,
and he was like, just like building a relationship. Came over, and lo and behold, I came across an incident, and I told like my coworkers and my boss, I'm like, law enforcement should probably know about this one. Like we respond to a lot of incidents right now at university in 2001. Like there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm like, this one I think deserves law enforcement. I don't know if you know the story. I actually want to present this to Jack at Darknet Diaries because there's a whole story behind it. But so I contacted Agent Mooney and he's like, let me dig in this and we'll get back to you. And like not very long after that, my phone rang from another Secret Service agent in another country that put me in touch with another Italian cyber task force that was on the case. And like I basically gave them all the usernames and passwords to the FTP servers where the hackers at that time, right, the evil hackers were storing their stuff, and they were convicted. And like I still have all the artifacts, and it's a really interesting kind of story. But to your point, Lee, right?
Same thing.
Keep in touch with your law enforcement.
Same thing. We were dealing with someone on a case from the FBI, and still kept in touch. And a number of years later, all of a sudden, agent reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you do a lot of that quote underground stuff, and you maintain tabs on those communities for exploits and all that stuff." But if you ever hear anything, and I can't remember at the time because the names were so similar, you ever hear anything out of the LOD or the MOD, and I can't remember which one it was, hey, give me a ring.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Oh, back in the mid 90s where I lived, I had two agents living across the street from me. One was all into the spooks and stuff. The other was actually helping them build the forensic capability for the San Francisco FBI office at the time. We had some interesting talks about the gear that he was buying and capability for imaging and other forensic stuff. They had a ball building that office. They really did.
I just want to go back to Larry for the younger audience out there. You said LOD and MOD.
Yes.
There are some people that may not know what you're referring to.
The Legion of Doom and the Masters of Destruction.
Or Masters of Deception. They went by both names.
They did because they changed it because they didn't want to be connotated with the fact that they were going to be destroying stuff because that was not their modus operandi.
Right.
Yes.
Great, and some great books on my list on both those topics. Both those groups, really, and yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some of the books? We've already done a bunch of those books, right? You know, we talk about the Security Weekly book club, right? You've done a couple of them. Joseph Men was Cult of the Dead Cow.
That was Cult of the Dead Cow. Yeah.
What was the MOD one?
I'm going to find it for you in 2 seconds.
I'm doing the Legion of Doom one effectively.
What is the Legion of Doom? It's not so. Masters of Deception.
Yep.
The Gang That Ruled Cyberspace by Michelle Stadela, Joshua Quinter, and Kobe Elliott.
Yep.
Masters of Deception, The Gang That Rules Cyberspace. It's got a red cover.
Yep.
Great
Did
one.
that one. And then the other one is Legion of Doom ish, which is The Hacker Crackdown by Bruce Sterling.
Yes, that's a great one too. Yes, that talks about Legion of Doom. They both, I think, mention. Wait, what was the one in Texas?
Legion of Doom.
That was Legion of Doom, right? Yeah. So both works talk about Legion of Doom. Do they, or was the
no?
one?
That was Masters of Deception.
Masters of Deception was New York,
and they
were
because
New York.
because they
New York
battled
group.
because they battled.
They battled.
So there was Texas and Arizona. For
Cult of the Dead Cow was Texas.
Yep.
And Legion of Doom, I believe, was also. There's people yelling at us right now.
Both
for that.
Texas and Arizona.
Yeah, I was not prepared. I didn't do my homework.
Exactly.
I read the books and then forgot some of the detail because they all kind of intertwined. Like the storylines intertwined. Like because I'd read one of the books and it would talk about the different hacker groups, and then I'd read another one. It would talk about the same ones, but like in a different perspective. So there is. There's like really not one about the Legion of Doom. Like Men wrote the one about CDC, Cult of the Dead Cow.
Arguably, as I'm finding so far, the most involved for Legion of Doom has been the Hacker Crackdown.
The Hacker Crackdown,
which was effectively a lot.
But he covers other stuff in that.
Yeah, because there's so much intertwined there. But I'm finding that most of the focus is Legion of Doom and sort of around Operation Sun Devil.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. No,
which was also Steve Jackson Games.
I don't know what order you read it in, right? But if you want to read those three works on like some of the original hacking groups, I think those are the three books you want to read.
Agreed.
The Hacker Crackdown, Bruce Sterling, Masters of Deception, The Gang That Rules Cyberspace, and what was Men's book called? We want to get him on the show. We're working to get him on the show.
Stand by. Let me scroll here.
Was it called The Cult of the Dead Cow?
Yeah, it was Cult of the Dead Cow. Yeah.
Was it just called Cult of the Dead Cow, or was there something more sensational?
Cult of the Dead Cow.
Yeah. It was his book on that.
Yep.
So if you're interested in hacker history, those are the three books you want to go after.
So for me, the Hacker Crackdown is my current read for the Cybersecurity Canon Project. Because that needs to be in there in some capacity. We'll vote on it, right? You got to vote on it. Yep. And that's going to be my submission. We have to do 2 a year. And I'm thinking my other one is going to be Cyberpunk. Katie Hafner and John Markoff.
Oh, again, that one
came out in
Cyberpunk Outlaws and Hackers. Yep. On the Computer Frontier.
I read that when
Katie Hafner
and John Markoff.
C.B. Droge is the narrator, and John Markoff is the other author.
I read that when it came out in the 90s.
But that's the one, Cyberpunk, Outlaws and Hackers on the Computer Frontier, that walks through three different stories, right? It's Mitnick, it's Robert Tappan Morris, and it's the German hackers, Pangborn and Pango and all the German hackers that hacked Clifford Stahl.
Yep.
So it's like the other half of the story of the Cuckoo's Egg.
Yep.
We could piece these together in some type of narrative, and like the order you should read them, because I'm kind of seeing after reading all these books in the wrong order, that there's a right order, a correct order to read them in, right?
Yep. There's another one that I did not that long ago that is a good one.
I finished Code Girls, by the way.
Katie Hafner, again.
Yeah, she's done a couple. She's really...
Where Wizards Stay Up Late.
Love that one. Awesome book. That's about how the internet was created.
Yep.
That was Katie Hafner too, huh?
Yep. Katie Hafner and Matthew Lyon.
Yeah, she's a great writer too, just in general, yeah. All right. Well, there's your homework.
Yep.
Read all those books in some type of order.
Yeah. So to add some more to the reading list, some ones that I've been going through lately. Code Girls. I've got about 2 hours left, 2.5 hours left. Now that's one that we listen together as a family.
I love that one.
The one that my wife and I listen together is Apollo 13 by Jim Lovell. And some of the other ones that I've got coming up are, the one that I finished is 2034, which is interesting. And some of the other ones that I've got coming up are Freaks by Matthew Derby.
Is that the telephone one that was produced by Audible?
Yeah,
what is the full title of that one?
It's just Freaks, P-H-E-R-E-A-K-S.
Yeah, that was a really good one too. Yeah,
I haven't read that one. And this is how they tell me the world ends. I'm going to read it.
Oh.
That's Bruce Schneier.
No.
That's what's her face?
Yes,
Yeah.
that one.
That one. You're going to read that one?
I am going to read it.
Okay.
Because as part of the cybersecurity canon,
Yeah.
we can recommend books not to read.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in with an open mind. And there was very much some discussion. I talked with some folks from the Canon Project last week, and that has come up a couple of times, and that it may end up on that list of do not read, and largely because that we know so many people that were close to the things that she's writing about that can claim bullshit.
Yeah. Agreed.
Which
many have.
Yeah, which may be less so on some of the older stuff. But like Cyberpunk, we can reach out to Cliff Stahl.
Yeah, but
to get the other side, and we can reach out to Kevin Mitnick.
Yeah, but exactly. I mean, in a lot of the other older works, there are people that I've reached out to and said, like, I really liked that work, and no one has like claimed bullshit on it.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I know, and I'll continue to do that, and maybe our recommendations change based on how many people we talk to about those works. But anytime I read a book, I always try and reach out to, like, I think that person I know was close to this, and they'll give me that that read on it, like, like, you know, as long as it's like 90+%, like, I'm good. Because it's never 100%. Like, let's be honest, never 100%, because there's like shit that we can't. There's shit that people can't talk about.
There's shit you can't talk about. Right. Time's gone by. You know, memories fade.
Right. But when I get the ones that, like, when we check with our sources of people that we know, and an overwhelming majority are like, yeah, no, like that's BS. I'm like, okay. Yeah. Next book.
That said, you know, we really need to do the book club. We need to publish some reading lists.
We do.
Even if it's stuff that we haven't read, we need to be more open about what is on our plate.
Agreed.
I think we need to make that happen.
Agreed.
Gotta have some time.
I flip-flop. Like, I go through a book, and then I try and catch up on some podcasts, and then I go through a book. And, like, I'll be honest, like, I listen to some of our own stuff because I'm not on every show. Right. And so I listen to some of our own stuff just to kind of check in and see what's going on. And then I love Darknet Diaries that we've already established. Like, religiously, when the new episode drops, I go listen to that. And Jack's been doing a great, amazing job. I also really like Malicious Life and Risky Business. Those are probably the ones that, like, when I'm taking a break from books, I go listen to those. I'll listen to some Rogan just to kind of mix it up and
get a break.
You know, get a break from cybersecurity, right? Just to get some general topic. Like, the latest one with Rogan is someone that was addicted to drugs and had to overcome that multiple times. Like, those are stories that, like, I want to be in touch with people and different stories, not cybersecurity. And, like, I'll listen to that one, and then I'm like, all right, what's the next cybersecurity book, right? And, like, go back to that.
I'll fully admit that I fell in love with XM Radio in that you could get music wherever you were on the planet. You could listen straight through and not have to tune through stuff. And I canceled that shit 5 years ago and replaced it with Audible.
Oh, yeah. You can get podcasts on Audible, too.
Yeah, but...
I use Audible for books. I use Spotify for podcasts.
Yep. Spotify I use for music when I listen to that.
And I use it for music, too.
And I don't listen to all that much music. If I'm at home and I'm working on reports and stuff, it's YouTube subscription. It's 35 plus YouTube subscriptions of stuff. And some of it food related, some of it not. Most of it is not IT security stuff, but I think I need to go back and start rethinking my thoughts on some of that, like Dark Knight Diaries.
What's your favorite non-cybersecurity podcast?
Oh. Honestly, I don't have one.
Impact Theory.
Impact Theory. I have not listened to that one. What's that one about?
That's Tom Bilyeu. Basically anything motivational, anything science related, biohacking, making millions. He was the founder of Quest protein bars that went entrepreneur, that went Bitcoin, that went NFT. He's founded multiple companies. Super brilliant. He's the one that does all the stuff on biohacking and mental hacking, and pretty interesting. Him and Lewis Howes.
Lee, what do you have non-cyber security related podcasts you listen to?
Oh,
I think you're muted.
Oh, it's still muted.
Still muted.
Damn it. Lee, I'll go first while you figure that out. So honestly, I do not listen to podcasts. But I will convert that in that, we're a podcast, but we do video. And I do a lot more YouTube content than video. And I'll run the gamut. And because some of the YouTube channels change, they ebb and flow over time, and I might embarrass myself a little bit with this. One of my favorites is Adam Savage Tested, and they do
you're a big Adam Savage fan.
And they do a podcast, and I've never listened to a single one of them. But I do all of his workshop, like I'm building
YouTube
something.
Video things,
I do something, building something. I learn techniques from him, his tool tips, and those types of things.
Yeah, Rogan does like a Rogan Clips kind of channel, which is like, if you don't know which Rogan episode you want to invest 3 hours in, you can go watch the clips of all of them and be like, oh, I want to go listen to that one.
Some other ones, Jimmy DiResta, Laura Kampf, they're all typically maker stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But arguably, there's two that I watch with my kids. And that is Nerdy Crafter and the name is going to escape me here because she releases an episode every Friday, and like it's a big deal in our house to turn the TV on Friday. Mariah Elizabeth.
Oh, Mariah Elizabeth.
She's like a crafty type thing. She got her start like painting squishies and customizing squishies, and the kids loved it, and now she does all sorts of stuff.
Nice. Did we lose Lee? Oh, Lee had to drop.
Did he have to drop, or did he drop? Oh, that's so bad.
I like the Jordan Harbinger show.
Oh.
It's just like interviews with like interesting people that have a story or a lesson. He did one. Did you guys listen to the one he did with the guy from Hamas?
No.
He interviewed the son of one of the leaders of Hamas that defected.
Interesting.
And the guy in Hamas, so the son of one of the Hamas like leaders, was a double agent. So Mossad had recruited him to be a double agent, and then like he couldn't deal with all the stuff going on with Hamas. He couldn't deal with Mossad and being like the double agent anymore, and like he did it to do the right thing, but he was like, I was so stressed out, like I couldn't even function as a human, so I had to go defect, and he like hid, like they couldn't even tell like where the interview was happening or any of that stuff, because like he didn't want this poor dude to be found, and he's like, I had to just like leave everything and defect, and I believe he's here in the US, but like they wouldn't say obviously where or any other details, but he told his whole story. He's doing I think he did a book and maybe a movie about it. You know, it's like stuff like that, like really, really cool interviews, and I like that. Some of it's sort of related to, you're like, you listen to someone like that from Hamas, and you get a little bit of the geopolitical, background for some of the stuff that we cover, which I find really, really good, but also just, regular stuff.
My interests run the gamut. Like if you look at my subscriptions and, non-security stuff and some amazing stuff made here. Mm-hmm. Vice Script Garage, Nick Zametti, Sam Crack, Will Stetler, Adam Savage, Future Neighbor for some food, B is for Build, which most of these are car stuff.
Yeah.
Western Champlin, Simple Living Alaska, let's see, DEF CON, Babish Culinary University, Smarter Every Day. Holy crap.
Smarter Every Day.
Smarter
Is that
Every Day.
a podcast? Or?
It's a all YouTube. Yep. Alex Chevrier.
The last story I wanted to cover really quick.
Yeah.
Clippy is back to troll your friends at Microsoft Teams. You can thank me later or not for this one. I don't know. I think we get a lot of... So, apparently, I don't know how someone found this, but we all remember Mr. Clippy, right? Because we all hated... Mr. Clippy was like the help system in Microsoft Office products. It was in all Office products, right? Like my memory is starting to... Like as much as we try and forget Clippy, we can't forget Clippy because it was the most annoying frigging thing, especially for those of us that were more techie kind of people. Like, I don't want the effing paperclip to tell me how to use Microsoft Word. God damn it. Like, get this thing out of my face. Close it. Click the X. Hurry. But Clippy has come back. And the article that I linked to in my story number 20 is how to put Clippy animated GIFs into your Microsoft Teams chat. And I've already done so, and it's been hilarious and awesome. And if you want to, I don't know if you're entertaining or pissing off your coworkers or some combination of both by doing this. But again, you can thank me later because there's a whole series of Clippy kind of animated GIFs and regular images that you can insert in your Microsoft Teams chats. So
there goes a whole hour.
There goes a whole hour of like every single Teams chat that you're in, like just put right. My whole thing is like
queued up right here.
Right? Like I always want to have this thing where I'm in some type of chat system and I only want to respond in like animated GIFs and or memes and or emojis. Like I almost want to like pick, like it's like a challenge to our listeners. Like only respond in your Microsoft Teams chats with variations of Clippy in like one conversation.
Dude, we had this conversation years ago about responding via text messages via programming language.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
if show equals tonight, set family equals middle finger.
Right. Or like for an entire week on Facebook, when you make a comment, it can only be a GIF.
You're gonna piss some people off.
Right? I love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Clippy is back really just to annoy people, which I really think is I mean, that's the heart and soul of Clippy.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Clippy is back just to annoy people. No, that was what Clippy did to begin with. He's just back to do it all over again.
The only thing worse from Microsoft was... Microsoft Bob. Thank you very much, Larry.
Yeah.
I mean, right after that is Windows ME, maybe?
No, Windows CE.
Windows CE.
Because you think about it, it was Win2K for Windows 2000, WinXP, WinME, and what was Windows CE? WinCE. What does that spell?
Wincy.
Wince. Wincy.
Yeah.
Meme.
Wincy. I just create my own language. The only one that tops me on that is Doug White. He has his own language for everything.
Oh my God, yeah, he does.
He does.
Oh God.
So go annoy everyone in your organization with Clippy in Microsoft Teams, and
There's some good ones.
Don't tell them I sent you. No, I don't want the hate mail, the hate tweets.
Shall we wrap this thing up?
Let's wrap it up, Larry. Do you have a question for our audience?
I do. Hey, how are you deploying Security Onion to...
Oh, wait, hold on. The music is really loud.
What? It's just
I couldn't even hear your question. Hold on. Cut the music. Okay. What's your question, Larry?
Are you deploying Security Onion to open source Security Onion hardware, AWS, Azure, using something different altogether that's not Security Onion, tell us about it. Come join us in Discord and all of our other social media platforms, Discord, securityweekly.com/Discord to get your invite and come join us. And with that, play the music, Johnny.
Now cue the music.
Over and get the heck out of here and go join us in Discord.